Yes, children. So, today we have to start with the new chapter, and I am going with the rural development, that is chapter 9 in your textbook. So, that is rural development. So, by hearing the word rural, that's rural sector or rural areas come to your mind, right? So, urban areas and rural areas. So, rural areas means low standard of living, low income people, poverty is stuck there, then low aggregate demand. All such things comes to your mind when you hear rural areas. So rural development means any action plan, okay, any action plan for the social and economic growth of rural areas. So that means any action plan if you take or implement for the upliftment of a rural area or a rural sector, you call it as rural development. And this action plan is to focus on the lingering and emerging challenges in rural areas. That means the very disturbing problems or very disturbing situations in rural areas, these problems or these action plans are to be taken to take care of those emerging situations. Then the principal lingering challenges. The lingering challenges are rural credit, challenges of rural credit, challenges of rural marketing, and the emerging challenges are exploring options of sustainable livelihood and also the challenge of organic farming. So these things we have to look in detail. So we are moving on to the first thing, that is the lingering challenges of rural development. In the lingering challenges of rural development, the first one is the challenge of rural credit. So rural credit means it is the credit for farming. See, farmers, they don't have any property or ancestral property to do farming very properly or with the modern technologies. They have to get credit from the credit societies or banks. Nowadays, you have so many banks or such financial institutions performing for them. So, credit is the lifeline of farming activity in rural areas. So, that means for adopting modern technology, modern techniques, all such things, they need money or capital, or you can say credit. So credit means it's the money which is used to carry out the farming business or farming activity. It is very important for the farming, or the rural credit is very important for the farming because most farming families in India are small and marginal holders, and they also produce subsistence farming. So they need for credit, therefore it is unavoidable. That means their investment is very big, or investment has to be made very high so as to pertain or so as to sustain in that agricultural sector. Then the gestation lag between sowing and harvesting of the crop is quite long. So for that also they need credit for achieving the livelihood. And you have certain types of credit for the farmers. They are being classified under three categories. First one is short-term credit. Short-term credit means it is basically used for the purchase of inputs like seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides, etc. That means very small amount. And making payments of electricity bills, like that it is made or it is used for such purchase or such transactions. So these small and marginal farmers, they actually take more of these short-term loans. So short-term loans is actually paid back in the time period of 6 months to 12 months. That is 6 months to 1 year, they are being paid back with the interest. Then medium-term credit or medium-term loan, and that is for actually the purchase of machinery, construction of fences, digging the wells, all such things. Then such loans are raised for the period of 1 year to 5 years. So in this period it will be paid back with the amount of interest. Then long-term credit, it is used for purchasing additional land, then carrying out permanent improvements on the existing land, etc. They ranges between 5 years to 20 years. So between 20 years they are being paid back with the interest payment. Then you have actually two more classifications of credit, that is productive credit and unproductive credit. Productive credit means it is used for the production activity in the agricultural sector. But unproductive actually relates to the consumption activity or marriage purpose or any death purpose. For that they are taking credit, means it is called unproductive credit. That means they are not using it for a productive purpose. They are using it for an unproductive purpose. Okay. Then you have sources of rural credit. That means from where these credit comes. You have two sources, that is institutional sources and non-institutional sources. Non-institutional sources are landlords, village traders, money lenders are three important sources of non-institutional rural credit. That means from they are being informal. They are informal sources of credit. Okay, that means money lenders, they charge very high rate of interest. Then this thing, village traders, money lenders, etc. So in traditional period, only these types of only these types of money lenders were there. So they had to approach for non-institutional type of credits. Now only in the recent years only it has been developed with the financial or sorry. So it has been developed as a institutional source of credit. Then so now next you have institutional sources. That institutional sources include government, cooperatives, commercial banks and regional rural banks. So these are the banks or these are the financial institutions that what you can say that give emphasis on the rural credit. So together they account for 7% of the credit, and in the beginning of first 5-year plan it was increased to 66%. So out of the total institutional credit, 75% is commercial banks and the cooperative societies only credits for 15%. Apart from that, you have regional rural banks, then cooperative credit institutions that has emerged as an important institutional agencies offering credit and credit support and related services. So these are some of the institutional sources. Cooperative credit society. First one is cooperative credit society. These societies provide adequate credit to the farmers at a reasonable rate of interest. So cooperative society, wherever you go you can see cooperative societies. In every district, in every state you have cooperative societies. So they actually aim for providing more credit or more money to the farmers in the less rate of interest. Then you have 16 to 17% of rural credit accounting to the cooperative societies in India. These societies ensure timely and rapid flow of credit to the farmers. Then actually elimination of money lenders as credit agencies, because they actually charge more rate of interest. Then spread credit facilities across all regions of the country, and the provision of adequate credit in areas covered by special program of development. So these are the objectives of this cooperative society. Then you have State Bank of India and other commercial banks. So other commercial banks also plays an important role in the generation of rural credit. So this prompted nationalization of certain banks. Nationalization of banks were done in 1969, and the nationalized commercial banks were directed to offer credit directly to the farmers as well as indirectly through the cooperative society. So cooperative societies actually functions through the commercial banks. Then regional rural banks and land development banks, they were set up to promote credit supplies particularly in remote rural areas and backward districts. So in backward districts, these land development banks and regional rural banks were given more important. Then National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, that is NABARD. It is an apex institution controlling all rural area credits. So apex institution handling policy, planning, operations in the field of rural credit, and its main functions are it actually functions as the apex funding agency for the rural areas. Then to take appropriate measures to improve the credit delivery system, and also to coordinate the rural financing activities of all credit institutions and maintain a liaison with Government of India, all the government bodies, that is public entities. Then to undertake monitoring and evaluation of projects refinanced by it. So these are the functions of what you can say, the NABARD or the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, that is NABARD. It is an apex institution controlling the what you can say, apex institution controlling all the credit facilities of the country, okay, or the rural areas of the country. So in the next video we can actually move on to the a critical challenge to the these things, a critical challenge to rural banking, and also a challenge of agricultural marketing. Agricultural marketing also plays a very important role in the rural upliftment. So that we will look in the next video. Okay. Yes, children. So now we will actually, before moving on to the agricultural marketing, you have to do a critical assessment of rural banking. That is the banking sector, the financial sector, that is the rural credit, the critical assessment to the rural credit in the Indian economy. So rural banking in India was significantly expanded over time, and actually with the expansion of these commercial banks and the nationalization of major commercial banks in 1969, it has actually made a very good progress in the Indian economy. The nationalization of commercial banks marked the beginning of social banking in rural areas, implying provision of institutional credit at the moderate rates of interest. Before that, it was non-institutional sources, that is the money lenders, who charged a very big amount of interest. Then establishment of NABARD, and also it has also made a very organized rural financing than ever before. Then you have to go for the limitations of banking system, that is the rural banking system. Banking credit or institutional credit needs more of collateral securities, that is they actually demand land in return of their loans taken. So that means property they have to surrender for getting more loans. So that means they are actually it made a very what you can say, a very tough situation for the farmers to take loans. And owing to the political populism, the government has often shown laxity in the recovery of loans. So as a result, default rate of trended has, so they had to write off these debts. So the government they actually failed to take these loans back from them. So that means it was a loss to these commercial banks, and they had to write off these debts. Okay. Then apart from the commercial banks, most financial institutions have failed to develop a culture of thrift, that is saving for the future. Nobody cared for saving for the future. What they had, actually they had to spend on that particular point of time. Then mobilization of deposits has remained rather subdued. That means at that particular point of time, deposits as well as savings was not given more importance, and all these credits they were taking from the institutional sources that was used for the farming. So these were the what you can say, critical assessment to the rural credit in the Indian economy. Then we have to move on to the second challenge or lingering problem in the economy, that is agricultural marketing or rural marketing. Agricultural marketing means it is the process between harvesting and final sale of the products. So that means you need proper marketing or promotion to your products. Then only it can be sold very smoothly. So that means it is the process of promoting your product from harvest to the sale of the product. So it is the process that involves gathering the produce after harvesting, processing the produce, grading the produce. That means according to the quality, the products are graded. You see ISI mark, you see FSSI mark, right? All in these food products. That means it is graded on the product on basis of its quality. Then packaging the produce according to buyers' preferences. Then storing the produce for the future sale. See, these rice and all, if it is not produced and packed properly, there is a chance of eating these by rice. This, what you can say, mice. So mouse and all, mouse, cockroach and all, they will come and eat these rice and all. So the agricultural produces has to be packed properly. Then selling the produces when the price is lucrative. That means at the higher, when the price is high, it has to be sold to ensure more of profit. Then at the time of independence, agricultural marketing was almost under the complete control of moneylenders, traders and commission agents. So they had to sell, or they had to surrender, these farmers had to surrender more than 80% of their produces to these moneylenders, who takes advantages or who exploits these farmers. So now it is not the case. You have so many policies implemented for actually coming up with the or lifting up with the agricultural marketing. So measures taken by the government to improve marketing system. First one is regulated markets. Regulated markets were set up to sell and purchase produces for these farmers. So marketing system is made transparent with a strict vigil on the use of proper scales and weights. If you see and if you go to buy some rice, wheat and all, properly it will be properly weighted, right? So that means it is regulated market. So they cannot actually now exploit these farmers. Then the market committees ensure that the farmers get appropriate price for their produce. If they have to ensure that the farmers are getting the valid price for their production. Then cooperative agricultural marketing societies. Agricultural marketing societies are also there now functioning. The government is encouraging to form the cooperative agricultural marketing societies. That is, they themselves better bargains in the market. So for getting better price for their producers. So bargains, the farmers are given the bargaining power to bargain for better prices for their producers. Then subsidized transport. Subsidized transport. The railways are offering subsidized transport facility to the farmers to transport these producers from one place to another. Then dissemination of information. Electronic media, print media are actively engaged in offering market related informations to the farmers. See, you can see now a very recent development is Krishi Vikas. That is, you can have all these agricultural practices on your fingertip. So you have an app called Krishi Vikas or something, I don't remember now. So if you take that app and upload it, you can have a very good class, or you can say a very good guidance for your agricultural practices. Then MSP policy, that is minimum support price policy. It is actually implemented by the government to improve agricultural marketing system. So MSP is an assurance to the farmers that their produce would be purchased by the government for a specified price. So if it is not actually sold, the government will take these bulk quantities in the price whichever is higher than the market price. So thus the farmers are always assured to some minimum income for the sale of their crop. So that means if it is also not sold in the market, the government is ready to buy that products in the bulk amount and also to give a price higher than the market price. That is minimum support price. So they have a ensurety or a guarantee that their producers will be sold in one way or the other. So that will be actually giving them a minimum amount of income that they are expecting for their producers. Okay, so that is called buffer stocks and PDS. See, the PDS system, public distribution system. So this government maintains this buffer stock at the time of excess stocks, and they actually release these excess stocks at the time of contingencies or unexpected things. At the time of flood, now itself at the time of this corona itself, the government has given us kits, right, with rice, wheat or some necessary food items. So that is actually they are actually purchasing it whenever it was what we can say, when it was actually not sold by the farmers. The government has maintained a buffer stock of these commodities. So now you have alternative marketing channels. That is, what are the other marketing channels? First one is Big Bazaar, Ritu Bazaars. Then all these direct sales contract farmers by the national and multinational companies. That is, if you see Reliance, supermarkets, then Big Bazaar, all these things give, see, one for one free discount, like that it will be given. So that gives you a more clear picture of what is the promotion for these products. That is, they give sample products freely. So to know more about that product, they give free samples. Then, so these are the alternative or new developments in the field of marketing. So that means supermarkets, all other big shops, they give actually a ray of hope to the farmers. Okay, so they give actually, see, atta and all, they will be writing one packet for one packet free, like that it will be written in the supermarkets and all. So it is nothing other than the support to the farmers given by the government, or it is actually a new ray of hope for them. So they are actually direct sales, what you can say, direct sales retail shops. Okay. So next, agricultural diversification you have to look, that we will look in the next video. Okay. Yes, children. So now we will move on to the agricultural diversification and the market risk involved in the agricultural sector. So agricultural diversification refers to the reallocation of some farms' productive resources into new activities or crops reducing market risk. That means you can say diversification from the consumer crops to the cash crops. That means cashews, indigo, like that. So many cash crops are there. So yeah, the producers, to get more profit, actually they commercialize the agriculture. That means they shift the harvest, or they shift the cultivation from the food crops to the cash crops. So diversification of crop production and diversification of product activity or the employment. Diversification of crop production means it is the diverse production of a diverse variety of crops rather than one specialized crop. Nowadays you have more than one crop in the 1 year. Earlier and all, you could cultivate only one crop in the land for a 1 year. So now you have 3 months like that, or 6 months like that. In 1 year itself you can have a diverse number of crops. And in India, actually it is still dominated by the subsistence farming. That is, diversification would mean a shift from subsistence farming to the commercial farming. Commercial farming, as I told you, it is a shift from food crops to the commercial crops. Then second one is diversification of product activity or employment. So it implies a shift from crop farming to the other areas production. That means it raises income as well as stabilizes it. So you could say that what you can say, moving from agricultural sector to the other agricultural producers to the other sector. That means more modern technologies, irrigation facilities, high yielding varieties of seeds. So instead of using a primitive technology, using of more what you could say, more generation, or what you could say, the more production. These methods can have more production in the agricultural sector. So next is the emerging challenges of rural development. That is, the first one is employment outside agriculture. Nowadays you have so much of varieties of jobs outside the agriculture. That means that is the diversification of production activity. See, animal husbandry, horticulture, then fisheries, cottage and household industries, all such things have a very great impact in the agricultural sector. So first one is animal husbandry. Animal husbandry means it is an important area of employment in different it is in India, which is different from crop farming. Actually it is the livestock farming. That is, the cows, buffaloes, all such livestock farming is called animal husbandry. So poultry, cattle, goats, sheep, all these are important components of the livestock in India. So poultry accounts for 42%, cattle for 25%, goats, sheep for nearly 20% is the total livestock of India. Then in most of the areas, livestock farming is combined with crop farming by the rural families with a view to supplementing their income. So what you can say, maintaining a cattle farming means they can have a income by selling the milk of the cows. So that means that is an additional income to the family. Also additional employment opportunities to the family. And these actually two principal problems related to these livestock farming are the low productivity owing to backward know-how and the deficient veterinary care. So instead of like you don't have a proper veterinary care for you for your animals or livestock, so that is why the productivity from these animal husbandry is very low in the Indian economy. Then the next one is fisheries. Fisheries means Kerala, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, all these principal states in India have a very good stock of fisheries. So that means fishing community in India depends almost equally on island sources and marine sources of fishing. And these what you can say, the inland and marine sources together are called water bodies. So you know, in India itself you have a very good stock of fisheries. That means most of our people are engaged in the fishing thing. So that means our fish stock is actually a good, what you could say, fish farming is actually a good what you could say, a very good means of livelihood to the rural people. Then widespread indebtedness of fishing communities make the fishing vulnerable occupation. So those people who are poor will go to the fishing job or fishing things. So that means a very indebted family will go to, or a very indebted family or a very indebted person opts for fishing. So they have some problems involved in that. Credit facilities will be provided to fishing communities that breaks their vicious circle of indebtedness. Then microfinancing through self-help groups may go for a long way in addressing the credit needs of the marginal fishing families. Then fishery technology should be upgraded and made available to the fishing community. Then comes the horticulture. Horticulture is another alternative sources of employment in the rural areas. That means diversification of crop production rather than a source of employment. That means it includes fruits, vegetables, flowers, besides several others. And horticulture, if you could see, when you move from one place to another, you could see very nurseries and all. That is horticulture. So presently India is the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables in the world. So high crop productivity led to the golden revolution, that is in the horticulture farming, and in the year 1991 to 2012. So horticulture is emerging as an important means of sustainable living in the rural areas. So and also these horticulture, the cost of acreage, that means the cost of these maintaining these nurseries and all, actually it has caused a very severe shortfall in the supplies of pulses and cut in their consumption owing to the high prices of these important source of protein as well as the vegetarian diet. So these all things have put a negative impact to these horticulture area. Then cottage and household industry, that means traditional source of non-farm production activity in rural areas. So traditionally this industry has been dominated by activities like spinning, weaving, dyeing and bleaching, but now you have activities very changeful in the rural areas. Now doll making, mushroom cultivation, beekeeping, all these things have emerged as a new income generation activities. So now you could see woman empowerment, right? Kudumbashri and all these things comes under this. So Kudumbashri, all the women coming in a group and producing something in general, and they are selling off for their rural development. So farm women's group focusing on income generation through employment of women in productive activities at the household level. So next we have to look through the organic farming and the sustainable development. What is organic farming? What are the benefits of organic farming? So these were the emerging situations or emerging challenges in the rural area. The first one was employment outside the agricultural sector. Next one is organic farming and its sustainable organic farming and its role in the sustainable development. So that we will deal in the next video. Okay. Yes, children. So now we will move on to the organic farming and the sustainable development. So organic farming means it is a system of farming that relies upon the use of organic inputs for the cultivation. That means organic manures for the cultivation. Sorry. So in the green revolution time, it is witnessed that we were using more of high yielding varieties of seeds, chemical fertilizers, pesticides. All these things have had a very serious impact on the soil fertility. So that to that extent organic farming was introduced with the use of what you could say the organic inputs, that is the organic manures which is available in the economy. So animal manures and the compost are the basic organic inputs in the organic farming. Then it discards the use of chemical inputs like fertilizers, insecticides and also the pesticides. So actually it discards the use of chemical fertilizers and also to what you could say also uses an eco-friendly environment for the production. So why organic farming? So you have a very important notable points as an advantages of organic farming. First one is discards the use of non-renewable resources. Non-renewable resources means which you cannot have a recovery. So once it is exhausted, it is exhausted. So you cannot take it back. So organic farming discards the use of such resources. Then actually environment friendly. It is environment friendly, and it does not use chemical fertilizers, but it only uses the ground, what you could say, the organic manures like animal manure or compost. These chemical fertilizers and all, actually it pollutes the groundwater by the content of the nitrate in that, and nitrate are health hazard and pollute the environment. Also organic farming discards the use of these chemical fertilizers. Then it sustains soil fertility. All these soil fertility which we have harmed on the use of green revolution, actually it has been preserved, or you could say it has been saved with the introduction of organic farming. And healthier and tastier food. If you could visit a supermarket, jaggery and all, that is the food I have noticed with the organic farming and ordinary farming. If you could see there, jaggeries will be in two packets. One will be in organic farming packet or in organic packet. The other one is the ordinary jaggery you get. So you could see the price is very high, but it will be very healthy as well as very tastier also. So organic things, organic products will be having a more good taste, or you could see it will be more healthier, because animal manures or compost are used as the inputs. Then inexpensive technology for the small and marginal farmers. Since price is also high, it is also a benefit for the farmers, and also they don't possess a very high priced inputs or modern inputs. They have a very inexpensive technology to use in the very conventional technology to use in the organic farming. So all these things, what you could see, the one is the lingering problem and the emerging challenges to rural development. I think we have discussed both of that. Lingering problem means it is challenges to rural credit and challenges to rural marketing. And emerging challenges of rural development means options to sustain livelihood, that is employment other than the agriculture, and also the organic farming. So these are the emerging challenges in the rural credit or rural development. So with all these things, or with all these what you could say, the challenges, rural sector is again yet to develop. So we could hope that with these all technologies implemented, or with all these policies implemented, rural sector in India will be developed in the near future. Okay, so this is the chapter rural development. I want you to take the notes also. I will be providing with the summary. Okay, chapter summary I will provide. So you will be writing that in the notebook. So this is the chapter. In the next class I have on 19th, that day we will look about I think we are going to end our chapters. We will look about human capital formation in India. Okay, on 19th we will look human capital formation in India. Now after that we have 2 chapters in Indian economy and 1 more chapter in the microeconomics. Macroeconomics, that is the income determination, which I have left out in the initial part. Okay, so now 3 chapters are pending that we will complete within October. Okay, so next then we can have a very good revision for your tests. So latest by October or November we will be completing our portions. Okay, I have only 3 chapters left out to complete. So that is it. Thank you. Take care all.